Today on the Canadian Institute of Ukrainian Studies Rapid Response Series, Did You Know CIUS Answers, a daily response to your questions about Russia's war against Ukraine. We're joined by Dr. Marko Stech, a writer, literary scholar, and specialist in the history of culture. He is the Director of CIUS Press and Scholarly Publications at the Canadian Institute of Ukrainian Studies. Thank you for answering another question for us, Marko. Can you share your insights from a historical perspective? Does the Crimea belong to Ukraine or Russia?
Well, Vladimir Putin, but not only him, many Russians consider Crimea for some reason to be native Russian land. The Russian phrase is "Исконно русская земля." Well, from the historical perspective, this is not so. The Russians and the tribes that were the ancestors of Russians are quite geographically quite far apart from Crimea, and historically they had very weak contacts or sometimes no contacts whatsoever. On the other hand, the Ukrainians and the tribes that are the ancestors of today's Ukrainians had throughout history been in very close contact with the Crimea. But having said that, the reality is such that through most of historical time, Crimea belonged neither to Russia nor to Ukraine. It is a very special region with an extremely complex culture. And in order to give you a little bit of an idea, I have to give you the bird's eye view of the very, very key moments in the history of Crimea so that I can answer to this question. In the antiquity, starting from the 7th century BC, Crimea was the place of the northern colonies of the ancient Greeks. It does not mean that only Greeks lived there. Very many other peoples lived there. In general, the Crimea has always been a region which was multi-ethnic to a large extent and ruled by different peoples and different tribes. In more modern time, the Roman Empire had control of the Crimea for some time. And then in the Middle Ages, where at the time of the Kievan Rus state, we have Crimea under the control, basically all of Crimea under control of the Byzantine Empire. Again, it was not only Greeks who lived on the Crimea. There were many Jews, there were Armenians, there were many others, and many of the Rus, but not the Rus who are the descendants, ancestors of today's Russians. They were very much far in the north, but the ancestors of today Ukrainians, connected to the Kyiv Principality, the Chernihiv Principality, and the Tmutarakan Principality, which was associated with Chernihiv. At some point, most likely Tmutarakan Principality actually controlled a large part of Crimea. Then jump a few centuries ahead. What is the next turning point is the attack of the Mongols, who occupy most of the Eastern Europe, including the Crimea. And the Crimea, because it is so strategically important on the Black Sea, becomes the place in which a special group of the Tatars is sort of splits off, and in the middle of 15th century creates a separate state, the Crimean Khanate. And these are the Crimean Tatars, the descendants of today's Crimean Tatars in the Crimea. And these Crimean Tatars are in very, very, very close relations with the Ukrainians and especially with the Ukrainian Cossacks. By no means these are peaceful and always nice relations. There is much warfare in between the two, but there are also military alliances of various sorts. Then we jump again a few centuries and we come to the 18th century and especially to the end of the 18th century. And this is the first time that the actual Russians or the descendants of today's Russians come into real contact with Crimea as a place, not only with the Crimean Tatars, because such contacts were there, but with the Crimea as a place. As a result of a series of wars with the Ottoman Empire, who had protectorate over the Crimean Khanate, with using much of the Ukrainian Cossack army, the Russian Empire occupies and annexes the Crimea. It's 1783. So it is only from that time that Russians actually have the control of the Crimea. And through the 19th century, they actually do control the Crimea. It becomes extremely important for them because this is the seat of the Black Sea Fleet. However, although they push out a large number of Crimean Tatars and Crimean Greeks out of Crimea, and many of the Crimean Tatars moved to Turkey and settled there, still this region is primarily Tatar, populated with many new Ukrainian settlers, and also some Russian settlers as well. And the next key moment in history is the revolution of 1917 and the aftermath. For a brief time period, Crimea belongs to the independent Ukraine National Republic, but then it's sort of a independent Crimean Republic led by the Crimean Tatars is being formed. However, because Crimea cannot sustain itself without southern Ukraine, for example, Crimea does not have enough water for itself. This is one of the problems that Mr. Putin faces today. Because of that, Crimea actually signs a treaty with Ukraine to become an autonomous part of independent Ukraine. However, this all falls apart when the Bolsheviks attack both Ukraine and Crimea, occupy both of them, keep Crimea for the Russian Soviet Republic, not because of any cultural or economic reasons, any logical reasons, but because it is the seat of the Black Sea Fleet, and they simply don't trust Ukrainians with that very strategic element. And the next moment in the history of the Crimea is 1944, when Stalin creates a genocide by blaming the entire population of Crimean Tatars as seeming alleged collaborators with the Nazis. He deports all of them to Central Asia, fundamentally, effectively killing the majority of them en route. And the Soviet Union forbids Crimean Tatars ever to return to the Crimea. In 1954, Nikita Khrushchev actually makes a logical decision and passes the Crimea on to the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, because the Crimea is totally devastated after the war and cannot just simply function in this type of economy that republics have in the Soviet Union. It naturally belonged to the Ukrainian Soviet Republic. It was there as just a regular district. However, with the independence of 1991, Ukraine recognizes Crimea as a separate, special region and gives it a status of an autonomous republic within Ukraine. And it also allows the Crimean Tatars, which is really the only, what we can say, as a native indigenous population of Crimea today, as far as the reality goes, who return to Ukraine and unilaterally and without any question recognize Ukraine and Crimea as part of Ukraine. So coming back to the original question, it is not true at all that Crimea is the native Russian land. Historically, it is not. However, throughout most of history, Crimea was neither part of Russia or Ukraine. However, with the contemporary current situation, in the situation when there is not enough Crimean Tatars to actually have an independent Crimea, and all of them chose Ukraine as the state in which Crimea is supposed to be, and Ukraine being an official and according to all international treaties that Crimea is part of Ukraine. This is what the actual reality is. And the claims of Russians for their illegal 2014 invasion of Crimea have no historical or political basis.
To the public, please keep sending us your questions and we'll continue to answer them.